South Carolina State Treasurer Curtis Loftis visited Myrtle Beach last night, setting the record straight on a failed legislative attempt to hijack the executive branch's management of $50 billion annually. He also spoke to our news team about the Palmetto payback. His comments can be heard here. Welcome to Myrtle Beach.
Glad to be here. Very nice to be here.
You know, we recently wrote an article about the Palmetto Promise. I know you're speaking tonight at the American Conservative Voices meeting, but it was one of our most read articles. And I think it's because people aren't aware of how much the Treasury is involved in getting money back to the hands of people. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Palmetto Payback is a great part of our unclaimed property program. David hadn't shown you this, but I go around with these lists. This is the Horry County list, and it's I don't know, it's just 20 pages, and every one of these people is more than $16,000. The first one is $490,000.
Wow.
We have a family on here that has $1.5 million.
Wow.
Yeah. So we, you know.
Do they claim the money? Ultimately, they do.
Yeah, and sometimes there'll be a wait that they have to check with their estate people and check with their lawyers and things like that. But unclaimed property is a huge business, and we've returned more money in the last 10 years than they've in history of the state. Because I love the program. I get to play Santa Claus. I get to go around and get people money back. We like to talk about these big dollar claims, and that's fun, and the people are glad to get their money. Don't get me wrong, but we do it so that the average person will go, look. You can give someone $1 million check, and they're thankful. And if you give a single mother of three $750, she cries, and she'll send you a thank you note.
And you know what? That's what's important, because I know you care about the people of the state. And I know that from interacting with you. That's what you really care about. You care about our residents.
Yeah. It means a lot to people. We routinely, people say to me, oh, I don't have any money. And we go and look them up, and they'll have $500 or $1,000 or more. We had a lady just the other day that I talked to, and I said, I think we have money for you. She called us. She was $12,000. Yeah. Well, you don't want to tell a politician that. Well, let me set this here. It's taken me 15 years. I was going to run for one term, right? 15 years to learn how to set my clock. It's good to be here. We've been here all day on government business. We've been talking about unclaimed property, college savings program, and the local government investment pool. And all that is fun, and it's especially the one I like the most is where I get to play Santa Claus, which is my it's y'all's unclaimed property program. It's funny how politicians will adopt stuff as their own. We have so much money, but I've lost it. We have so much money that belongs to people in Horry County. I've got a list here, and they start off at $497,000 for one person. We have one family in this county that has $1.5 million. Yeah, it's amazing. You have places like Kingston Plantation, the place itself, $77,000. We've got law firms, we've got investment firms. It's just amazing. This is like 17 pages, and the lowest one is $17,000. I tell you that because the unclaimed property program is a lot of fun. If you go to the Treasurer's office, you can look that up yourself. And most people are so smart that you don't think you have any money. But I'm telling you, you're not as smart as you think. We were waiting to get into the GOP convention the other day, and I was with the chairman of Anderson County. And she and her husband were there, and I said, well, y'all might have some money. And, oh, no, we'll not have any money. And her husband was adamant. I said, well, you know, when I get back to the office, and if I find money, I'm going to wear you out. $300. And that's the most expensive $300 he ever got, because I wore him out at the meeting last night in Anderson. It's a lot of fun. No one really believes they have money, but we have almost $1 billion that belongs to you. It belongs to churches and charities, businesses, yourself. You can go do a free search at the Treasurer's office because you paid for it. You can look up your family and friends. So even if you don't find money for yourself, you get to call your old buddy. I was on a phone call, a bunch of treasurers were on a phone call with the Obama White House. You know these long calls, you sit there, so I'm sure that every treasurer was doing the same thing I was, which is trolling our websites, looking for people. Well, I ran across an old girlfriend. So I had my assistant, I said, go put it on the dog. I want her to think, because I hadn't talked to her in 30 years, that she's got the Pope and the President calling her at once. Get her on the phone. So I got her on the phone and said, hey, baby, it's Curtis. And she didn't say Curtis, too. I knew better than that. But, so I said, you know how you used to think I was cheap? They said, yeah. I said, I got $500 for you. What are you talking about? So I told her. Well, her husband picked up the phone, who was my old best friend. That's how they got together. And he says, you mean you're finally coming due for some money? So we had $500. We chase down people, and it is really hard for $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000, $500,000, $1 million. And the reason we like to talk about those things is because for every one of those we pick up, a single mother of 3 will get her $500 or her $1,000. The guy that I hand $1 million check to, he'll say thank you, and he means it. He's happy to get his money back. But the single mother's going to cry and give me a thank you note. So that's why we do it. We have tons of money. We have a Spanish here. We have tons of money showing up in Hispanic names now. And that's, of course, a problem because the whole staff doesn't speak Spanish. And so we got to really kind of deal with it. And I'm a little bit worried that, because some of them are $50,000, $70,000, things like that they're going to go home and not know that money's there. So we're working on those kind of challenges. I'll tell you a couple, one story, because I don't want to take too long. So I'll take some of these home myself, and I play with them. We've got a good staff. They know what they're doing. But, you know, I deal with crooks and criminals all day long at the State House, so it gives me something good to do to play Santa Claus. So I was looking for, and once you know how it is, Mr. Pasco will know this, when you start chasing somebody, you learn a lot about it. Well, I was chasing Deborah K. Scott and her husband, Ronald, but Ronald died unexpectedly. They had a great textile business, and it took off so quickly they didn't have a proper accounting system. But they said, we don't care. We're selling so much, we'll just have to circle back and do that. If we lose some money, we lose some money. But he died unexpectedly. She sold out, left the state. Finally tracked her down to her brother-in-law's house in New Jersey, and I called him, and he was gruff. I mean, he's like the guy who's the longshoreman. You know, he's wearing a heater from some old mob movie, and he might fit you for cement shoes. That's the guy I was talking to on the phone. But I thought, well, I'm safe because he's 400 miles away. So I told him who I was and what I wanted, and he hung up on me. Didn't even say goodbye, just click. I thought, well, he's pretty good. So the second time I called him right back, I said, well, you know, give me just a couple minutes here. This is important, and click, he's good. So I thought, well, you know, I called him one more time. I said, if you give me 30 seconds, I'll never call you again. I promise. And he was really quiet, and I thought, is he so good he's hung up on me and I don't even know it? You know, so he says, okay, I'll do it, but I got to tell you this. I don't know you. I don't like you. I don't trust you. I think you're that Nigerian prince who follows me around the internet. And you have the worst fake Southern accent I've ever heard. But I'm going to call you. And 20 minutes later, Deborah K. Scott called. I think it was $270,000, about 10 years ago now. $270,000, and then we searched we searched all of the states, and then it was about 300,000 more. So she got almost 500. It was $470,000. And so that's a good story, and remember that. So if you're from another state, you can check missingmoney.com. That's where all the treasurers are going together. You check all 50 states, missingmoney.com. So get your money. And it's like the family that had the $1.5 million. They know about it now. I think they're involved in a little estate planning. What you find in a lot of this is like, I'm 67. Say I have a brother that's 75. Maybe I let that money age a little bit. Maybe I just let him go to his great reward, then I get my great reward, all of it. I don't have to split it. I think a lot of that goes on. So it's interesting and it's fun. Please check your name out. Of course, you know about the College Savings Program. We started off, it was about $1.1 billion when we took over. It was a very good program. The bones were there, but it just wasn't there. And so we spent a long time redoing it, and now it's a $7 billion program, 235,000 people in it. If you want to save money for college, if you want to save money for tech school, trade school, anything like that, even K through 12 tuition at private schools, K through 12 tuition, it's the place to go. You beat the tax man on 3 different times. Now, I like to beat the tax man just once. I feel lucky about that. You beat him 3 times. It's easy to do. When we had our websites and contracts changed, I said, just remember, I want it idiot proof. I'm the idiot. If I can't do it, it doesn't get on, it doesn't pass. So we got it and it passed. So I feel good about that. And of course the Treasurer's Office is a $75 billion bank at the heart of state government. We have been under attack, but we've been under attack for a long time. But that $75 billion is important to us. Last night we had $52 billion, $200 million all in. That's county, city, municipal money, special purpose district. Like today we were out visiting the Grand Strand water and sewer system, one of the places we went today. Coastal Carolina, all of these folks we manage money for, Horry County we manage money for. So it's a great thing because we can impact these places in a significant way. We have the ability to have all that's required to invest those sums of money and to get back a premium. So we do that, and it's something we enjoy doing. But all of that has been under attack, and a lot of you have seen it recently, but maybe most of you don't know, this is my 10th investigation. Since I've been in office, I've been investigated 10 times, and it's all been by the state senate or one of their minions. It started when Bill Condon and I discovered things wrong at the pension system. We found where $245 million was being sent to New York, Boston, LA, and everywhere else in hidden investment fees. They were off the books. Nobody knew about it. Let's just call it a quarter of $1 billion, $249 million every year. Now you'd have thought when I blew the whistle that I would have been the good guy. Well, I was with you guys, but with the state senate, I got investigated. That's when Robert went to the floor, if you remember, the Senate, and announced he had reported me to the SEC for reporting that, like it was some kind of confidential information. It wasn't. Next time I got in trouble is when we determined that they were not one of the best performing plans in the country. Of the top 40 plans, the largest 40 plans, they were the bottom plan. And so not only were they the bottom plan, but they made the least amount of money and they returned the lowest amount of money. So you're walking into a Rolls-Royce dealership and you're paying full price for that Rolls-Royce, but you're walking out with a used Volkswagen. That's what we were doing. So that's the kind of thing we've done, not because there's any pleasure to it, but you do it because you have to. It's what everybody wants. Senator Leatherman, when he was around, he kind of owned the state, right? Like it or not, that's who he was. But he had rules. He had rules that you had to play by. And we had a relationship, like he was like dad, and I was like the son who couldn't come in on time. I'm in at 12:30 instead of 12 o'clock every night. He'd beat me up a bit, and then we'd get over it, and it'd be okay. But that state senate no longer has rules. And that's a problem for everybody in this room. That's a problem for everybody in government. They decided that once they were, I'll call it lucky, that's a bad choice of words, but once they were fortunate enough to be able to rid themselves of the comptroller, they looked at me and said, whoa, we can get rid of the banker and the accountant all at one time and take charge of those offices. That's important. That's a good thing to have happen if you're those guys. Well, the former comptroller had some significant errors. Whether he needed to leave or not, that's debatable because there were ways to get around that. But that was what happened. He decided to resign on his own. But I'm not going. I didn't make a mistake. That $1.8 billion you heard so much about, it wasn't real money. It wasn't mine. It was a mistake made on the comptroller's books over 10 years ago. The comptroller's office was thoroughly aware of that on a regular basis. My office had some awareness, but see, we balance to their books, but we don't know what their books are balanced to. So, we're balancing to air, effectively. Now, we balance to the bank at the Treasurer's office. That's what we do. We're like you. We've got our checkbooks, or you can imagine how big a checkbook is when you have $52 billion. So we've got that, and we've got bank after bank, investment firm after investment firm, trade. We've got everybody involved, and it's constantly settling up, and it's all reviewed by auditors and accountants all over the place, the federal government, state government, everybody's involved. So we know that that's right. What we can't be responsible for is what's at the Comptroller General's office. So the important thing about all of this, regardless of what you heard, is there's not one penny missing. There's not one dime that's been misspent. There's not one dime that's been stolen. There was never a mysterious bank account with $1.8 billion, even though that headline went around the world, amongst other headlines. That was just made up. There was never any truth to any of that. So what they decided was, in order to get rid of me, how do you do that? Well, they knew that I hadn't done anything that was impeachable. So there's a statute that's old that says we could remove him. It's not clear how it really works because it's never been done before. But they didn't care if it worked because the whole point was to ridicule and humiliate me. And then I would leave. Well, I made up my mind a long time ago. I didn't care what they said about me. Because how many of y'all have, politicians especially, but sometimes real people, you have a Google alert on your cell phone, right? And so if your name pops up, if you're you guys who don't know about that, if you're in the newspaper, your name pops up, or if you're on TV or whatever. It's the worst thing you can ever have is a Google alert. Get them off of your phones. For one reason, you think you're getting all these Google alerts, and it's like the station in Phoenix has put it on the back of their website because their headquarters in Monaco told them to do it, and they're just trying to build stuff. Nobody's ever going to read it, right? But the other thing is, y'all don't read it. Editorial pages who write about me constantly. There's like 6 people who read them. And, you know, so it just doesn't matter. But what happens is it molds your life. Well, I can pretty much be assured that Larry Grooms and Stephen Goldfinch are paying attention to their Google alerts. But we can't be concerned about it. We just have to get away from that. What they're doing now is because they can't get rid of me. They realize that I'm not going. They've said everything about me they can say. They're still playing with the idea of this new superpower they have. They have found a superpower. And that's this immunity. They can say anything they want about any one of y'all, and there's nothing you can do with it. They can call you a pedophile. They can call you a serial killer. There's nothing you can do about it. When they have a trial, like for me, or hearings, they don't swear. I have to, everywhere I go over there, I have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So not only do they not take an oath, which they could take one, they won't, but they have immunity. So can you imagine being in a really important battle, and the prize is $75 billion a year, and the other side has no rules, none whatsoever. Now go back to Senator Leatherman. He had rules. Remember The Godfather? Godfather had rules. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, but remember he wouldn't sell drugs to kids, but I think he'd sell drugs to adults, something like that. I can't remember. But he had rules. You couldn't shoot with certain kind of people, right? You couldn't kill with certain kinds of people. They were rules. You may not like those rules, but those are the rules that they had. They don't have rules. They made up evidence. They have evidence that was given to them that we happen to know for sure, without a doubt, that cleared me, and they won't present it. In fact, we asked Larry Grooms, Bill, you probably remember this, we asked him on the floor of the Senate, where's the email that shows that the Comptroller General ordered these entries made? He said, I thought the packet was too thick, so I didn't include it. Yeah. One email. So they had 1.1 million documents, and they had, with AI and then professionals going through them, they had subpoena powers for every single person in state government and outside of state government. They had all the consultants, the actuaries, the auditors around and working for state government. And they couldn't find one person that said that I knew about this. And yet they go to the Senate floor and said, he knew. They just made it up. And that's their superpower. The House does not do this. Now, I've been in hearings at the House, and I come away thinking that they don't like me nearly as much as I like me, but they're fair. They can be mean, they can be rough, but you get it, right? You understand, maybe if I was in that position, I might do the same thing. But the Senate's a different place. So I've had, like I said, I'm on my 10th No, I'm on my 11th because the Office of Inspector General is there. He's not there because of a specific allegation. He's there because the Senate just said, go and inspect, go and investigate. Well, I'm glad he's there because he's a man with a badge. He can't lie. He's been there, he's been referred by the Senate to me twice before, and on both times, we got clean bills of health. I expect one this time. When he's finished, which will be sometime in the October, November range, then the Legislative Audit Council is scheduled. They'll be there 9 months. And when they're finished, the Legislative Oversight Committee will be there. And they'll be there for 6 or 8, maybe 9 months. So we're going to be investigated for no reason at tremendous cost to the taxpayer until the end of 2007. Now, to that, let me just add that we got phone calls from the newspaper, the 2 largest papers in the state newspaper and the Post and Courier, on Thursday. The Senate has told them you should go FOIA all the information on the college savings plan because that's our next subject. So it's a $7 billion fund with 230,000 participants. Do you have any idea how much work it's going to be for us to get all this information to the papers? Now, there's no allegation. It's just another thing they want to do. So I'm convinced that all of this is, they will destroy the office if that's what it takes to get rid of me. The person they have as Comptroller General is a Democrat. The Senate was behind his appointment, and the day he walked into office, he weaponized his office against my office. He hasn't met with me ever, and he won't meet with my office. He just flatly says, no. Now, I'm the bank, I'm the money, he's the accountant, he's got the books, and we're not, he won't meet. So what do you do in those things? So far, the 10 investigations have been State Law Enforcement Division, Ethics Commission, Securities Exchange Commission, twice, the Supreme Court, which Jean Toll was very helpful to me. I want to say that. Thank you, Jean Toll. She was great. There have been about 4 sets of hearings in the Senate, and there's never been a finding of criminal or ethical wrongdoing. And yet we've got 3 more. No telling how much this has cost. They just won't stop. How long can a public organization, how long can a public agency, how long can a public institution last under this pressure? We protect ourselves from scammers and hackers from Ukraine, China, Venezuela, Russia, it doesn't matter. We protect ourselves from greedy managers, money managers, and greedy banks. We protect ourselves from vendor fraud. We protect ourselves from check fraud. All of those things. What's the one thing I can't protect myself from? It's the state Senate when they have immunity. That's the one thing I can't protect myself from. We have vacancies now that we can't fill. We had people who were going to work until the end of my term, which is a year and a half. Some of them have 40, 41 years of state service. You cannot replace those people. But they were going to work till then. We were training folks because I was retiring. But I've got to stay now because I don't have, well, one, I want to. I'm not confused. I work for y'all. I don't work for the Senate. If I leave, they'll bully the next guy. Will they go to Ellen Weaver next and bully her? Will they go to Hugh Weathers' replacement? He'll be new. They'll go bully him. So we just can't have that. So we've got to keep pushing back. So we've got to be independent because I'm in the executive branch and they're the Senate. They're the legislative branch. So we can't stop. We've got to fight. And what we've got to do is take this opportunity, because it's not about Curtis. It's got very little to do with me. And I hate to paraphrase or put myself in any kind of light with Donald Trump, because he's a one of a kind, you know. I was about to say the only person on the planet. He's probably from a different planet anyway, you know. But I'm just in the way. It's just all, you know, I happen to be in the way. Fortunately, or it's kind of unfortunate for me, I've been divorced a very long time, and I never had kids. So I don't care what they say about me. I don't have a Curtis III floating around, Curtis Jr. I don't have them floating around. I have a wife out there, she got to hide her head. I don't care what they say, because it's only the bubble. But I care what they do and say about y'all. And it's a $75 billion bank, and we're under constant attack. And how long is it before we make a mistake? How long is it before somebody doesn't do their job properly because we're not backed up, because our policies and procedures aren't up to date? Because as we can't hire people, as people retire, there are going to be problems. There has to be. This is Management 101. If you have $10,000 in your checking account and you make a check, mistake in your book, or somebody gets a hold of your password, the most you're going to lose is 10 grand. Well, last night, we had, and I got it right here, $52 billion. Now, they're not going to get it all. But when we make a mistake, it's $100 million. This is $50 million. It's $200. It could be anything. Who's going to be responsible? Well, I can tell you one thing. The people with the immunity, they're not going to be responsible for anything. They don't care. They just want control of your money. Now, I'll finish up with this. Why do they want control of your money? Because if you want to get rich, put yourself next to large pools of money. There's nothing new about that. You can go back to Aristotle and see where he talked about that. There are so many ways, and you can find by looking across state governments, treasurers and comptrollers and chief financial officers, people are getting in trouble all the time. Sheriffs get in trouble. All sorts of people get in trouble over money. Because people get confused about whose money it is. But if you're near really large pools of money, and I'm sure Angie's seen this, people try to buy you in 100 ways. But there are 1,000 ways to make money off this pot of money. There are 1,000 ways to get ahead. I sat in an expensive hotel room in a conference once, or dining room, listened to a guy effectively bribing a treasurer. And how he was doing it was, hey, your wife is very smart. Can we put her on a charity board? And it was an international charity board, paid 200 grand a year. But here was, now you know she's going to have to work. There's a lot of travel. There's 4 trips a year. It is hard work. Now, we do send people, and they'll probably go on a charter because there'll be more than one board member, but it's a lot of work. And I'm thinking, okay, she's traveling around with servants and an Airstream, I mean a Gulfstream, not an Airstream, a Gulfstream. and I heard the terms like Paris and Kenya. I'm thinking, this is real work. She must be really good. But that's what they do. They put your kids on boards. If you're friends with BlackRock, they have board seats on every Fortune 500 company in the country. It's easy. A certain state treasurer friend of mine had 2 board seats before they left office. And in their state, they could actually serve. So it's easy, $200,000 or $300,000 a piece. Bill, you know who I'm talking about. We had somebody leave the investment commission after doing favors for somebody. 1 board seat in 8 years. 8 years, maybe 9 years, has made that guy $7 million. That's just 1 board seat. And that's why they won't charge. That's why they want the money. My office is so keyed in on transparency and accountability and about truthfulness. That's why the office is having a hard time dealing with the Senate, because they're not dealing on truthfulness. If I go to a Senate hearing, like I did on April 2nd of last year, and they ask me a question about what happens if a trade busts or gets held up, I said, well, say Goldman Sachs has a trade, it hits at 3:02 instead of 3 o'clock in the afternoon, trade doesn't clear, we'll track that trade down the next morning. My office sends a letter back the next day saying, we don't deal with Goldman Sachs. Well, that was just an example. I didn't say we did. Well, didn't think of a name. That's how persnickety my office is. Can you imagine if I started sneaking around trying to get some money or get a board seat or something? They couldn't stand it. Now the other side just makes it up. I sat there on the floor at this hearing, and an Air Force officer stood up and said, I'm reading from page 9 of the report, where it says the Treasurer's Office made false entries into the books. And I'm thinking, did I miss that? I raised the question. I said, I don't think it says that. Where does it say that? He says, I'm reading from page 9 of the Alex Partners report. I said, I don't believe that's true. And when I questioned a little bit, he said, well, let's just move on. Well, so we move on, and I'm sitting over here, and a break comes up, and I'm motioning, he comes over. I said, can I see that piece of paper? He says, I don't have a piece of paper. I said, you had a piece of paper. He said, I don't have it. I said, well, I want to hear about this word false. He said, that was my word. Now, I know it wasn't his word because after he said it and I jumped him, he scratched it out. So he took the sword for the staffer or the senator who gave him the lie. Now, which I guess that's good for that guy, but he's an Air Force officer. So I was in a group of military people the other day giving a speech, and I said, what happens if a non-com sends an officer out with knowingly false information and he presents this to his peers? And they said the non-com is going to be court-martialed. He says, just like that. One of the guys looked at me and he said, I don't know why that senator didn't walk over and slug the guy right there on the floor. He sent him to lie, and nobody cared. Luke Rankin held up papers and said, 26 people have been removed from office. Your lawyers say nobody has. We've asked for those papers 3 times, and Luke Rankin won't give them to us. Nobody's ever been removed. This is what we put up with, and what we've got to do is find the courage to realize what we already know, which is many people should not be in office, and it is our job to remove them. Some people we don't agree with politically, we know that score. But we can't have people who watch other people lie.
Amen.
I think I've asked this question everywhere, and I get these blank stares. Where can you go that you can lie? If somebody stands up here, or if I'm here now and I start telling tales, somebody's going to call me down, or people will start heading for the door. If you go to your Little League baseball park, where you can get more trouble, of course, you can in any bar, but it's your Little League baseball park. You tell a lie, maybe one little lie, you can kind of get away with it if it's about how big the catfish was that you caught last week. But you start telling lies or personally insulting somebody, there's troubles. Your city council, you go to court. How many times can you call somebody a liar? I think they called me a liar over 50 times in those hearings. And not one person got up and walked out. Now, where could you go? I mean, this is a serious question. Where can you go and have that kind of behavior? There's nowhere, because they have immunity and they have that superpower. Actually, Richard Exum, the former comptroller, was the first person. We just didn't realize what went on. They were so rude and terrible to him, he just left. I had the ability to see what happened to him, so I watched. The state auditor, it was not his responsibility. He left because he just wasn't going to put up with it. And so, if I were to leave, who's after that? We can't allow that to happen. We've got to fight back. We've got to know that these people they've invested themselves into this movement to get rid of me and to take the care of this office. We've got to just take care of them. We've got to vote them out of office. We've got to say, we're not going to take that kind of behavior, because we don't have a choice. You got a question? Yes, sir.
You talk about you're part of the executive and the Senate, of course, is legislative. But what role, if any, can the judiciary of South Carolina play in helping to resolve those sides?
One of the things we're trying to do now, because you asked a very good question. If the senators, not one will raise their hand and say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Not one of them. So what we're trying to do is, how do we get them in court? It might be federal court, and we may have some grounds. We are looking, because once we have somebody who has to swear under oath, penalty of perjury, every bit of it goes away. And there's a lot more to this story I can't tell you now because of the SEC investigation, which, contrary to what Larry Groom says, has nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me, but he says about it. But just things I can't say, but that will not last forever. And when that's over, then we really get to have our say. So I hope that, and I do tell just everybody, if a good lawyer can find me a way to get into court, they would be very well paid. Yes, sir.
As citizens, how can we help?
I think y'all happen to be, I think, in Mr. Goldfinch's district. It's great to let him know. And just because we don't have a choice. There's 2 or 3 people. Let me tell you, I lost that vote in the Senate. Most of those senators can't spell accounting. They're nice enough people. They're nice enough people, don't get me wrong. But they've been told, it's a seniority system. It is the original DEI. No matter how dumb you are, if you've been there 28 years, like a certain senator whose last name is Grooms is, you're the number 4 guy. And then you'll be the number 3 guy, and the 2 guy, and the 1 guy. The number 1 guy was standing there on the podium watching all this, which is unbelievable to me. Had they been talking about my worst enemy like they talked about me, I'd have left. I don't care who it was. I had a very important person call me last Sunday and said that they watched, they're not in politics, but y'all will know who it is, that they watched this hearing with their wife and their adult kids, and they turned it off. He said, we felt like we had been watching porn. It was so debasing to just honorable people. Now, again, I'm past all that. I don't care. I mean, I've lived through it, so there you go. But we can't have that happen to somebody else. Well, y'all been good to listen to me. I've been rambling a little bit. I can't get on track about this story because I have been talking about it in public for 2 or 3 days now. And I just can't get my head around the whole thing. I'm going to. By the end of the next week, I'll have a coherent statement about it. And I'll come back when I get that done. Because now it's just so much to tell. And the story is so broad. If I had notes and stuff, we could talk for hours. And it's riveting, some of it, because you will not believe some of the stuff that will come out. Yes, sir.
Sir, I'd like to share with you something that happened many years ago now in our neighborhood. My children were very young. We have 3, and their first 2 are the first 2, were only less than a year apart, and the other one came a little later. They came home one day to our home on Lakeside Drive, and they said to me, Dad, I said, yeah, what? They said, we got a new neighbor. And I said, who is it? He said, his name is Rankin. And I said, at the time, I said, oh yeah, all right. But boy, has that come true.
Yeah, I had never had a bad experience with Lou because I don't deal with him much. He's in judiciary. But I was really surprised about this. But this what this shows you is when the power structure swings, they all fall in line.
Curtis, real quick, here's a question I think that a lot of people struggle with. I don't really understand for the most part, but where was the mistake made if the 1.8 billion never existed, and we later proved that it didn't exist? Where's the harm? Who was actually harmed?
Nobody was harmed.
And then what was the original mistake that was made that created the phantom 1.8 billion to begin with? If there's a short answer to that.
Yeah, they mixed sometime like 2007, 2008, around there. They started mixing appropriations, which are, we call it funny money. They're not real dollars, they're budget dollars. You can't spend those. And then that's what the Comptroller General has mostly. And then we have the real money. We call that hard green folding cash. That way people know the difference. They started mixing those two together. And we didn't know that because that's after it leaves us. We have our books and they have their books. And what they did was they got confused. They just didn't know. But the 7,700 entries that created the $1.8 billion were sent to us on, well, I'll mess the date up, but in 2017, from the Comptroller General, who has the legal authority to give us accounting directives. It said, make these entries now, even had now on it. And it said, we've taken the appropriations out, leaving only cash. It was exactly the reverse. So it was all at the Comptroller General's office. Larry Grooms knows that. Stephen Goldfinch knows that. They don't care because they need to make me in charge of the Comptroller's books. That way they can get rid of me. And that's the goal. Thank y'all very much. Thank you very much.